Hi, I'm Brian. I'm a professional photographer. I've shot dozens of weddings. I've bought lots of different equipment, and today I want to help you decide what camera makes sense in your experience level and what kind of clients you want to attract. I really struggled with what camera do I buy next, what lens do I buy next, and I want to help you with that today because I spent so much time doing that, and it doesn't have to be that complicated. So what I want to show you today is I want to break this video down into a few parts. We're going to talk about cameras, then lenses, then lighting and flashes, and lastly bags and accessories. All right, so when it comes to cameras, if you're going to be shooting events or things that you're going to be able to focus fast and get that shot, which is really important if you're going to do things like sports or weddings or things like that, you need a digital SLR. I know mirrorless is the up-and-coming thing, but when it comes to autofocus, it's not quite there. And you can split those DSLRs into two categories, one being APS-C, which is a crop sensor camera, and also the full-frame cameras, all right? So let's talk first about APS-C. So what that is it's got a smaller sensor, and so the image quality is just not going to be what it is as a full frame, but the trade-off is price. The lenses are going to be less expensive, and the bodies are going to be less expensive as well. When I first started shooting weddings, I actually started the crop sensor. I started on a 7D, which is kind of like a T6i or a 70D or even like a 77D. It's probably comparable to those. And what I have here is a 70D and a 77D. Now, the price difference between these two is a cropped camera is going to be probably in the range between $600 and $1,200, while a full frame is going to range probably somewhere between $15 all the way up to $35 or even higher for the body. But if you're just starting out, I think it really makes sense to start on an APS-C because I'm guessing the clients you're going to start with are not going to trust you. You're not going to be able to show them an awesome wedding portfolio or senior portfolio. And it's okay to start here because you're probably not going to be charging as much, and their expectations probably aren't going to be way up here. So start with the APS-C, and if you're going to spend extra money, really put it into the lenses. So when it comes to full frame though, you're going to have a sensor that is going to provide better image quality, better dynamic range, and also it's going to capture more. If I have a 24mm lens on here, it's going to capture a lot more compared to a 24mm on a crop sensor. Basically, it's only capturing part of the image inside that larger frame. So if you're going to be buying an APS-C camera, that's fine, get a good start. You know, you don't want to spend money on the body, you want to spend money on the lenses. So if you are going to upgrade on your lenses, make sure they're compatible with a full frame camera. So that means don't buy EFS lenses. That S is for the cropped sensors. Instead, buy an EF lens that's going to be compatible when you upgrade your body. I bought a couple lenses that only worked on these, and when I sold these, I had to sell that lens as well. But a couple lenses I didn't. So for example, this 24 to 105 lens, I was able to buy this when I had my crop sensor, got to my full frames, went on, and I used it for a long time. So that was a great investment. Another thing to note, a big difference for a photographer is not only is the image quality, the ISO performance, meaning good low light, because I would never shoot a reception with these. If it was like inside a barn or reception hall, I would really want a full frame. Now we can get around that a little bit by certain lenses, but if you really want the performance, you do need full frame. The sensor is just larger and it's able to capture a better image. One thing that really matters to me as a wedding photographer is to be able to change my settings quickly. And I know a lot of crop sensor cameras, they only have a shutter wheel and they don't have an aperture wheel. Now, like a 77D or an 80D, they're going to also have an aperture wheel, which is really helpful. And of course, you're going to have that on a 6D or a 5D Mark III or 4. You're going to have both wheels as well. But if you compare, like here's a 70D versus a 5D Mark III, you're also going to have a lot more buttons available, basically. You're going to be able to access things a little quicker, which is really important when you have to get that shot. All right, another thing to consider is the crop frame cameras. They try to keep the bodies a little bit smaller. Like the 77D just comes with these little batteries compared to the 5D Mark III or the 80D or the 60. They come with these larger batteries. This one's going to last me 4 or 5 hours, while this one's only going to last me maybe 1 or 2 hours. So either way, if you're going to be shooting all day, you're probably going to need 2 batteries, but if you have a crop sensor camera that doesn't have the full-size LP6 battery, you're probably going to want to have more on hand. And the other reason you want to upgrade is because the full-frame camera is just going to have a bigger, stronger, beefier body. These are weather sealed cameras. Now a 70D, 80D is also going to be weather sealed, but compared to like a T6i, T7i, some of those, they're not weather sealed. So I've shot weddings and it's been pouring and I have no problem taking this out there as long as my lens is weather sealed as well. I've knocked this thing around a lot. I've never actually broke a body before when it comes to full frame cameras. I have broken some APS-C cameras before. They don't have that magnesium aluminum body or whatever magic Canon puts in these things, but these are awesome just for that reason alone. So if you're gonna be shooting a lot, you're gonna be shooting events, you're gonna want the full frame camera. One reason you might want to keep the APS-C though is the little flip screen. Almost all the crop sensor cameras, whether it be a 80D, if I could open the darn thing, 80D, 70D, T3i, T7i, all the T series, the consumer ones, they almost all come out with this flippy screen here. And the only time that's really good for a photographer is if you're doing selfies with your clients, probably not, would be if you're gonna go up above a crowd and try to take pictures from up here. And if you're gonna do that, the flippy screen's nice, but it's not necessary. It's really more for video if you wanna do some vlogging or things like that. It comes in real handy. Okay. So the big question I always had was, when do I upgrade to full frame? And I would say that really depends on, just basically how much money you have on hand. How much money do you want to invest into something like this? Something I always have to keep in mind when I'm going to be buying equipment is my client even going to notice the difference? And if they are going to notice the difference, can I charge more? Because I'm not going to buy a $3,000 camera and $4,000 in lenses if I don't think I can charge more. Why do it then, right? So I would say stick with your APS-C if you're shooting weddings for family or friends. Maybe you're only charging $500 or $1,000. But I think if you're starting to charge over $1,000, you really need to be using a full frame camera. Depends on your clients, depends on your experience level and everything else. I would definitely take a professional who's done 100 weddings on APS-C compared to an amateur with a full frame camera. But for you as a photographer trying to figure out when to upgrade, I would say whenever you think you can start charging more, that's a good time to upgrade. So I'd say I shot just a few weddings on APS-C and then I upgraded to full frame because at that point I was already starting to charge $1,200, $1,400. I was upping my price, and so I felt very comfortable also putting that money in to get that full frame camera. One thing to also consider, if you're gonna go full frame, if you're gonna do weddings or something that you can only be shot once, you gotta have dual card slot. I mean, there's just no way around it. A 6D started on this. I started doing weddings on it, and you can too if you want. If you want to get by with just a single card slot, my suggestion would be just use 8 GB cards, switch them out pretty often, so if one went bad, at least you got most of the wedding. I'd hate to go to a client though and say, I'm sorry, but I lost a third or half or your entire wedding because a card failed. Now I know you can send them into SanDisk or Lexar and they should be able to recover it, but just imagine if they didn't. So that's why I love my 5D Mark III so much. And I know what you're saying right now, hey, why don't you have a 5D Mark IV? I tell you though, if you already have this, the 5D Mark IV isn't that big an upgrade. Now if I had to buy something right now, sure, I would jump for it. But if you think of all those awesome images you've seen for the last 5 or 6 years, excluding maybe the last 1 or 2 years, they were probably shot on this camera and it still takes amazing images. But my point is this has dual card slot. One card fails, I got the other one. I put 128 gigs on both of them. I can do an entire day and not have to worry about it once, unless someone steals my camera. All right, so let's move on to lenses. And such a struggle trying to figure this out, what to buy, when to buy it, what makes sense. But basically, you need 3 lenses for sure. You need something that shoots wider, and I'd prefer a zoom. You need something that's really good in low light, like a 50mm, 85mm, and then you're gonna need a zoom lens. And I'm saying this in regards to events. If you're gonna cover a wedding, these are the 3 lenses that you need. So I'll talk about them individually, and then we'll talk about a couple lenses that are also just nice to have, but not necessary. All right, so you probably have that kit lens still around, and this is fine. This is 18 to 55 on a crop sensor. That's gonna seem more like a 24 to 80mm, 85mm, right around there. It's an okay lens if you're outside, but the problem with it, that my big beef with it is when you zoom in, your f-stop goes from 3.5 all the way to 5.6. So you're with that client, you're on manual mode, you take that picture 18mm and you want to go for that headshot, so you go to 55mm, and when you do that, it gets dark all of a sudden. And that's bad for two reasons. First off, you might want to fumble around with your settings and change your shutter speed, which you didn't want to change because now it's going to be blurry because you got some handshake in there. When you go to edit it, then you have to worry about getting that exposure to match the picture right before it. So I'm really not a big fan of these lenses just for that reason. Not even talking about the optics or the focus or anything else, because a lot of that's not really going to matter to the client. And when it comes to focus, if you're shooting like seniors or families, you take a few shots, and if one of the focus is a little off, not a big deal. But as soon as you can, go to a fixed aperture lens. What that means is no matter if you're wide at 18 millimeters or you're at 55 millimeters, you can stay right at f4 or f2.8, whatever it is. It's going to make your shooting quicker, and it makes your editing a lot easier. So that's what these three lenses are. So see ya kit lens. All right, so I got a few different ones. Now this Sigma is great. It stays at 2.8. It's like a $400 lens right now, which is great, but this is actually only for a crop sensor. I had this for a little while, and I think it was a mistake buying it because I had to sell it when I sold my crop sensor. So I would actually avoid this unless you know you're going to be on a crop sensor for like a couple of years. But if you're hoping to really ramp things up, you may want to try it, but otherwise I'd avoid it. So I want to talk about the two lenses I use all the time for seniors, families, and weddings. It's your 24 to 70 or your 24 to 105. I don't think it really makes a difference which one you go with because your longer lens is going to be able to catch the 70 and beyond. So this Canon is f4, but it goes to 24 all the way to 105. The f4 was great, used it for a very long time. The bodies are getting better at ISO performance, so even if you have to be at f4, you know, if you're shooting on a 5D Mark IV, the ISO, you go a little higher on that, it's going to be okay. F4 also isn't bad when you have like someone's coming down an aisle, you take a picture at 2.8, if your focus is just a little off or delayed, they might be out of focus. So having F4 sometimes isn't the worst thing. Also, shooting at f2.8 and you're in a group, it's probably not going to look very good unless you're super wide. If I'm zoomed in at 55 or 105 millimeters, I'm not going to use that 2.8 if one person's face is a little closer to the camera or not. So I think this is a great lens actually, even though it sticks at f4. And these are pretty inexpensive. Now if you buy it from Amazon in the Canon box brand new, it might be around $1,000. But if you buy the white box, meaning somebody bought this with a 5D Mark III or 5D Mark IV, they resell them. So you can pick these up for about $600. So I can't recommend this lens enough for most events. Now, this worked for a few years, and I still like it, and it's accurate, it's Canon, it's an L lens, it's awesome. But I don't think it's as good as this Tamron. The optical stabilization in these are awesome. Now, also, this goes down to 2.8. So with that lens, I might shoot at 1/60th of a second, you know, because I feel like I'm just a shakier hand. But I can shoot this all the way down to an 80th of a second, and I'm going to get it more light because it goes all the way down to 2.8. So when do I want this over this lens? Well, when I need to shoot when really low light. When I'm in a reception and all I have is a DJ lights or candle lights, things like that, I can still grab this and feel pretty good that it's going to get the shot. The focus is probably just as accurate as this. I can't really claim that it's just as good because Canon, you know, if it's proprietary, it's their brand, the focus is probably going to be a little better on, but I have no complaints with this at all. And also the vibration control on this, Tamron right now, maybe later Canon will beat it, but right now has the best optical stabilization out of anybody. Now, I know a lot of people say Sigma's close and things like that, and they probably are, but I think Tamron, I probably shouldn't say probably on video, but I think we'll look this up and see if it's true, but Tamron claims they have 6 stops of optical stabilization. That's amazing. That means I can slow that shutter way down. I don't have to worry about my handshake as much. And I'm just going to be a lot more confident because when I'm going through the editing and I see shots that are just a little blurry, I know it's because my hands or the optical stabilization wasn't as good as it should have been. So this is going to be your all-purpose lens that you use throughout the wedding day or senior shoot or group shots or anything else. 24 is very wide. It works for most shots, even if I'm inside a church, maybe inside a dressing room or something like that. 24 is usually wide enough for the most part. And then 70 is tight enough that you can do like a headshot and it looks pretty good. Now, you may need to go higher than that, and that's what one of these lenses is for, the 70-200, but that's going to be for headshots where you really want some great bokeh. or the people are just far away. So this Canon 24-105 is great, but if you're gonna go in low light, I'm sorry, you're gonna need 2.8 and with great vibration control. Or optical stabilization or image stabilization. They're all the same, okay? They mean the same thing, but each manufacturer has a different term for it. But at 24 millimeter, I can go down to 1/40th of a second and feel just fine that it's gonna stay in focus. And at 2.8, I'm gonna be able to capture a lot of light. So in a reception, I need that 2.8 optical stabilization. So that's why you're gonna wanna upgrade to this. Now, if you don't think you're gonna shoot in dark situations, that 24-105 f4 is gonna be just fine. So this is great for darker situations, but sometimes it doesn't seem like enough. And that's when you need that prime lens that can go down even further. Now Sigma's making some great lenses. They got the 35 millimeter out there that a lot of people are buying. They got the 50 millimeter or 85 millimeter. Prime lenses though just means you can't zoom. All right, so this is my nifty 50. Now it's not the cheap one, the $120 one, which is fantastic. I totally recommend it. It was the first one I got. But then I upgraded to this Canon, which is about $350. I think you can get these for less than $300 now. But going down to 1.8 or 1.4, it just gobbles the light up. I mean, it is awesome in low light situations. When I need a flash in the reception, I can turn my flash off, pop this lens on, and just the DJ lights are enough. So if you could only have 3 lenses, if you could only have 1 lens, I would say just go with a 50 millimeter lens. You could do the whole wedding. It's a problem not getting close enough. Sometimes it can't go wide enough, but you can move with your feet. You can always move with your feet, but you can't get more light in certain situations. So, but if you're gonna have 3 lenses, which you really should if you're gonna be covering something like a wedding, you're gonna need something that can do low light, whether it be a 35 millimeter or 50 millimeter. You're gonna want one of those. And then lastly, you gotta get one of these beasts right here. You gotta have the 70-200 so you can get those shots that are far away. When they're doing their vows, they wanna see the expression on the face. They're gonna wanna see the details. So having a 70-200. Now, I'm not gonna say you need a certain 70-200, you just need one of them. I started with a Canon L lens 70-200 and it worked great for a long time. But once I got to the wedding reception, I wanted something that I could shoot. I wanted something that I could shoot at a higher shutter speed, so I upgraded to this Tamron 70-200 with optical stabilization. Now, if I got the Canon version, 2,000 plus, right? Super expensive, and that totally makes sense if you're gonna be shooting like 20 weddings a year. When I found out that I could upgrade to a Tamron 70-200 with optical stabilization and 2.8, I was really excited to do that because this was gonna be able to go into the reception and take great shots. If you're in a darker church, still gonna take great shots. Now, I know Canon's focus might be a little quicker, a little more accurate, the color might be a little more accurate, but the client's not gonna notice that. What they're gonna notice is a blurry image because I couldn't get my shutter speed high enough. So this was only like $700 for the international version at the time, and now they've come out with the G2 version. So Tamron has a 6-year warranty, and this lens, I've not seen optical stabilization that is better than this. I think the optical stabilization beats Canon hands down for the 70-200. I know Canon's gonna be coming out with a lens sometime soon, at least that's the rumors. But right now, the Tamron's optical stabilization 70-200 can't be beat. So I feel very confident with this in a dim church or reception. It works fantastic. So if you're first starting with your wedding, you know, an f4 with optical stabilization or without it is fine. But I would say if you had $600, $700, $800 to spend, go ahead and buy a Generation 1 Tamron 70-200. I've heard Sigma's are all right too, and I've tried one, but I didn't really like it that much. And then if you have a little bit more money, you want to spend $1,200, $1,300, go ahead and get the Generation 2. The optical stabilization is better, and it also, the image quality is a little better as well. And I've heard the focus is faster, but honestly, this Generation 1 seems pretty good too. All right, so again, this is the trinity of lenses. You need something that's wider. This is the 24-70. You need something tighter like this, 70-200. And you need something for low light. Now, if you're gonna shoot all outdoor all day, and it's gonna be brighter situations for the most part, you could probably just get by with a 24-70, 24-105. You could do it all. I'd feel very confident as long as I'm not in low light. Now, if I get into that low light situation, then the only lens I would need is that 50 millimeter. So it really depends on your situation. I feel pretty confident I could shoot either wedding with one of these depending on that. Now, basically you're gonna get this big lens though because your client wants it. Okay, you don't need this, but it's going to look great. And if your clients are paying a higher dollar amount, you're past the amateur level, then you're going to want to have that zoom. Now, the last thing though is a couple just nice to have lenses. Now, it's basically a wider lens. Now, this is a crop sensor. It's a 10 to 18. This is a cheap lens, 280 bucks if you're on a crop sensor. This is going to give you that wider shot. You know, if you're going to be in a bus or a changing room or something like that, or on the dance floor, this lens is really nice to have. If you're going to be in that low light situation though, you can use this Rokana, and it goes down to 2.8 fixed aperture, and this is 8 millimeters. This thing shoots at like 176 degrees. So like if I was shooting here and there was something here, it's going to record it, which is crazy. But it gives very distorted look to it. It is a fisheye compared to this, which is not a fisheye though. So, you know, if you're actually going to be filming it though, fisheye is just not the way to go. It just gives a trippy look. It's not what you want. So, these are nice to haves. I rarely use them, to be honest. You know, there's certain clients might see a shot and think it's cool. Nobody's asked me, says, man, you got a fisheye lens? I love those wide angle shots that you took. I don't really hear that very often. A fisheye though, or just a real wide lens, can give you those epic shots. You know, you have the bride and groom in front of the church and they're in the picture and you can get the whole background of the church in there. That's nice to have, but I don't think anyone's hiring you for that shot. It might make you stand out a little bit more. No client's gonna ask for it, so I'm not gonna be able to charge extra for it. It's a debate. I don't know. I'd say if you got these down, yeah, go ahead and get one of these, but you really gotta focus on the Trinity first. All right, so I've been talking a lot about low light, right? There's one thing to avoid. If you don't have the lens for it, you don't have the camera that can get the ISO that high, is use a flash. Now, a flash doesn't always make sense, it might not work in your situation, but my first flash was really handy when I was in those situations where I could bounce the light off the ceiling. If you don't know what bouncing the light off the ceiling is you basically just stick the flash on your camera. Of course, that's what you do with flashes. And you shoot it straight up, it hits the ceiling, and it comes down, and it makes it's basically you're turning the ceiling into one big soft box. And I do something that's a little less conventional, a little unconventional, I guess you'd say, is I actually tilt my lens back like this so often. So when I shoot, I'm actually hitting the ceiling kind of behind me, because when that light bounces back, it kind of comes at a little bit more natural of an angle. If it's right above them, it might make their eyes a little dark and things like that. So when I shoot in the reception halls, I'll shoot like this. And I think it works out pretty good. So when I upgraded though, I went straight up to the 600EX, and there's been upgrades since then, and I bought 2 of them. I also even bought one of these little triggers. So this was a $1,200 investment, and it's great. It's very reliable, it's very quick, but I actually regret it. And the reason for it is because the third parties that are coming out are so good. This, I don't even know how to pronounce them, the Yongnuo 600EX RTs are so cheap. They're not even a third the cost. They're about a fifth the cost. And they're faster. They're actually faster than the Canons. And you can use one of these as a trigger. That trigger was $200. I got this for $109. So you could buy 4 of these for the same price as when I bought one of these brand new. And I have no complaints. Is the build quality the same? Probably not. I have not broken either though. I've knocked them both off light stands and they both survived just fine. I've shot both of these out in the rain. I don't even know if this is weather sealed or not, but I've shot both in the rain and never really had a problem. So you know what though, if the build quality is not good enough, I can buy 5 of these though. And if I break one, big deal. I'd rather have a couple spares and those spares break than have just one that could break because someone stole it, broke it, whatever might happen. So honestly, if you're just starting out, go with the Yongnuo, 110, 120 bucks, and you're all set. Get one. If that's not enough, start to get more. Once you get really good with off-camera flashes, you want to get more of these and set them up on light stands and do some fun things like that. And we'll make a tutorial on that kind of stuff later, but just start with one. And if you point it straight at the client though, it's gonna look like junk. You know, if you use your flash like this, you don't know what you're doing. To be honest, like if you're shooting portraits like this is such harsh light, you get those bad shadows in their face. Everyone who has a camera with a little poppy up flash shoots the same way and it just looks awful. You gotta bounce that light. I don't care if you bounce it straight up, if you're shooting it behind you, or even off to the side. If you've got a white wall over here, bounce that light off it. It doesn't have to be white, it can be gray. Bounce that light off though. The light's gonna come from more natural place. It's going to give them some natural shadows, and it's not going to be that flash that your aunt uses. Start with one, and they talk to each other with radio signal. So get another, and then get another. So what I shoot is, I'd say start with this. Now, if you're shooting 30 or 40 weddings a year, and you want to justify to get the price of the Canon, go for it. You're going to make up that money really quick. But if you're only doing 10 weddings a year, I would go with one of these or less, and then just get some more. So when I shoot a wedding reception or something like that, I'll have one of these on my camera, and I'll have 2 more on light stands. And I can position them in the reception hall how I want. Maybe I want a backlight, or maybe I want just 2 lights shooting up to get as much light on the dance floor because I got 80 people out there. Either way, get one of these, then start upgrading. Once you got 3 or 4 of these, you're doing pretty good. So they're great. Can't say enough about them. For the price, you can't go wrong. All right, camera bags. They're important throughout the day, so I think it's something worth covering right now. So the standard camera bag looks something like this that someone might want to sell you. This is okay if you got like 1 or 2 lenses. It's all right, but like, again, when you're talking about like an event or seniors, you might be traveling around a lot and always grabbing this and having your camera in the other hand, or maybe a chair or a reflector. You're gonna want something that goes on your back. So you might have started with something like this, and then you're thinking about upgrading to like a backpack. Now this is like Amazon Basics. I think I got this for like $30, and it was all right at the time. But you're gonna quickly find out that if you wanna hold like 3 lenses, a couple flashes, things like that, this is no longer gonna work. So then you upgrade again. So you buy a bigger backpack. Now I can fit an extra body in there, all the lenses, and I got a couple flashes as well. And this is okay, but this is cumbersome. And it looks stupid when you're trying to cover a wedding and you're going around with this big old backpack. Now, some people do this, and I'm sorry, if you want to do that, that's just fine. But if you're with experience comes simplicity in a lot of ways. So bring this to the wedding, absolutely. But leave this in the back pew or leave it in your van. You're going to want to have stuff just in case, but you don't need to carry it around. Instead, what you want to do is get a bag like this. Ooh. It's got a lot of stuff in it. But here's what I would do for the day. You're gonna use a bag like this for your other cameras. Now, if you want to carry a separate body, and I definitely recommend having a separate body just in case. Now, some photographers like to shoot with 2 cameras on them. I don't like to, actually, and the biggest reason for that is because I need to keep in mind of 2 different camera settings as I'm shooting. I like to shoot with just 1 camera. I've tried to, I've done it a couple times. I just don't know. I just don't feel like I need it. Now, if you want to go for it, sure. And if you're going to do that, you're probably going to go with the double harness. So you're going to have something, it's going to look something similar to this. But what I have instead is, so I have my camera here, and I love having just a strap like this. So, you know, I can shoot, and I can see my images real quick, and anytime I can just drop this, and it's just fine. But what I like to do is keep 2 lenses in here. So if I got my 24 to 70 on here in my bag, I'm gonna keep my 70 to 200. Maybe I need to get some headshots, or the event started, or maybe the event's already going on. And I got my 50mm. So, you know, before a wedding, I may be shooting something outdoors, group shots. I go inside, I go to the dressing room, and it just gets a little dim, so then I'm gonna switch to my 50mm. So those are the 2 lenses I'm gonna keep inside of here. And it's relatively easy. So, you know, if I got a switch, you know, it's just a matter of switch. I'll take this one off and I'll pop this one on. It did take me 4 or 5 seconds, I know. But honestly, if I had 2 lenses, I'd just keep, you know, this one on one camera and the other one on the other body. And I'd be able to go back and forth, but like, oh shoot, the settings are wrong. I went inside, I'm now outside. So that's why I prefer to shoot it. There's no wrong way. You just need to be able to carry those lenses with you. You don't wanna go back and grab something off a table or whatever else. You gotta have it right here, or it's gotta be on a separate body. Okay, and the last thing I'd definitely keep inside this bag is a flash. So whenever I want, I can pop this on and use it. Now you don't have to, you could always keep it on the camera, but again, if I go inside and it's a dim area, I can pop my flash on and use it. So I got my body, I got my lenses. What else is important to keep with you? I'd say there's a few things. These are obvious things. You gotta have extra batteries. You gotta have extra cards, right? A couple other things I would take with you in your larger bag, something you're gonna take to the wedding day but not carry around with you, is something like gaffer tape. Sometimes like the girls will want their dresses hung up somewhere, And it's not even a bad idea to have wire. Actually, I keep a little bit of wire with me and gaffer tape, and that way it allows me to hang stuff up if I need it. And you'll just be surprised where you could use this. The other thing, if it's a rainy day, I also keep a couple of plastic bags. You know, if someone needs to sit down or lay down, you can kind of hide this behind somebody. If you're really worried about your equipment, I've seen some people put a bag around their camera and just have the lens sticking out, things like that. Not a bad thing to have with you. You're definitely going to want your battery chargers here. Not something you need all the time, so maybe keep it in this bag. And an extra body, like I mentioned before. Even though I only shoot on one camera, I'm going to have a separate camera with me. I'm also going to carry a separate body with me just in case I destroy my full frame. Even just an APS-C, you know, 70D or 80D, I'd feel comfortable shooting the rest of the day with if that were to happen. All right, so whether you're shooting with the 77D with the 18 to 135 with the Yanggu flash, I'd feel okay doing a wedding with this, and this is $1,000. But now I'm shooting with around $5,000 worth of stuff with the Canon 5D Mark III, plus these Tamron lenses and the Canon flash. And I'd feel comfortable doing either one, but this is really about low light, convenience, and getting every single shot. But you know, if you're thinking about getting into wedding photography or seniors or families, don't be afraid to start with this. You know, this is just camera gear. If you're a good photographer, you're still going to take excellent images. You need to also be able to deal with people and control light and just have that eye of what's going to look good. Don't let these things limit you. But hopefully I gave you an idea of where you can start and where you should head to. Thanks for watching.